I was just so humbled that my words that I wrote, that I self-published and reached like this many people with, and was really pretty proud of. God is going to put in front of this audience that I would never, ever be able to reach. And then he's going to use the proceeds from that to fund a ministry that is helping people around the world.
We have been meeting once a month and recording these conversations about what it means to create from rest. For Erin, that looks like taking a Sabbath year from all of her work as an author. And for me, that was what does it mean to pursue things a little bit more intentionally, kind of scale some things up. Um, as we have learned, it's kind of shifted a little bit for me, but my creating from rest was more of a productivity thing, while Aaron's was more of a stepping back. And so we are now in the middle of July as we're recording this. And I am excited for this month's conversation touch point. I always love doing these with you, Aaron, because I just feel like I always learn something. And I also feel like it forces me a little bit to like reflect on the previous month and to say, like, where is God working? Where have I been trying to strive instead of just trusting Him? And so I don't know. How has it been for you so far?
Oh, exact same. Every time I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to say or what has actually happened this. And then when we start talking, I'm like, oh my goodness, like God has been all over this. And so it has been really good for helping me to reflect, but then also seeing your journey and where he's leading you is always encouraging. So this is probably like one of my favorite highlights every month.
Yeah, same, same. All right, so let's just dive right in. You've had a busy month. You guys have been traveling. You ended up receiving an award for one of your books. So that's exciting.
Yeah.
And then I just love your testimony about that, about how God just even used this last couple of months to prepare you for that, so that when you did receive this like accolade, you realized it wasn't something that was defining your value or your identity. So that was a lovely, beautiful thing to hear from you. And then you actually just got back from a conference. And
Yeah.
so did you enjoy your time there?
I did. I did. And okay, so one of my favorite parts was the conference was in Grand Rapids. And the only reason I went to the conference, because of course this is a Sabbath year, but at the end of last year, I went to the same conference last year in July. And afterward, they said, and I had decided because it's a pretty pricey one, different ones are different prices, and this one's a little bit higher. And so I decided not to go again this year, but they had a thing where it was like, write a blog post about your experience and you might win a free whatever. I don't even know if it told me what I would win, but I was like, sure, I'll write about my experience because I had a great experience there. And so I blogged and tagged them. And they said, well, you won and the conference is free. And so, yeah, that's when I was like, well, I guess I'm going back to the conference again. This will be great. Um, and then, of course, I have a travel buddy. She comes to me with all the conferences. And so I was like, are you coming with me? And so she came too, which is great. But I love how God has just orchestrated so many things this year um, because I had this free conference thing, I was able to go, even though it was a Sabbath year. It's like very clear, like, here, do this thing. But Grand Rapids is the headquarters for Our Daily Bread Ministries, which is the publisher that picked up my book. Now, I did not know that they were going to be my publisher when I signed up to go to this conference, nor did I know that Grand Rapids was their headquarters, but God knew all of that. So I got to take a tour of their headquarters while I was there. And that was like the most special part of the whole conference. I mean, the whole conference was really good, but that was the best part. Um, because I don't know how much you know about Our Daily Bread.
I just remember those little pamphlets, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, I have a stack of them right over there where I can't reach. But the little devotions, and they're free, and they have offices around the world. And so they print these devotions and they send them out for free, and they're completely funded by donations. So with the devotions comes a little envelope, and if you want to put money in there and send it in. So I think they said 90% of their funding comes in either cash or checks in those tiny little envelopes that people just give
Really?
because they feel like it.
That's been so cool.
I know. And so we got to go in the office where they have a machine that cuts open all those envelopes, and they have volunteers that pull all the money out and count it and sort it and all the things, um, and it was just so humbling to be in the building. They have a massive operation. I wish I could give you all the numbers. There were so many numbers, but I'm a words person, so I don't remember any of them. But it's like millions of copies of these devotionals that they send out every year to around the world in tons of languages to encourage people in their faith and keep them in the Bible every day. And the way that they do their book side, because they just recently started the publisher side of things. So when you get these little devotions, now every month they have like a little paper that talks about one of their books that's coming out. And it has a card that says, "Would you like a copy of this book? Check yes or no." And so you check it and you mail it back in. Once again, donation totally optional. And so they said that they will have maybe 30,000 copies of a book. People check yes, and they'll send out these are not ebooks. These are physical books that they're mailing to
Mhm.
every person who says, "Yes,
Was
I
there
want this
like
free
where
book." They send out all these books for free to people, and they said that usually, people will send a donation when they say, "I want a book," or whatever. And so the books that they're sending out for free is actually a really good fundraiser for the ministry to enable them keep sending out the devotions. So the book offer, even though it's free, is funding the ministry to keep doing what it's doing. And I was just so humbled that my words that I wrote, that I self-published and reached, like, this many people with,
Mhm.
and was really pretty proud of, God is going to put in front of this audience that I would never, ever be able to reach, and then he's gonna use and they're gonna offer it for free,
Yeah,
and then he's gonna use the proceeds from that to fund a ministry that is helping people around the world have access to God's word. I was just I don't even know the word for it other than just humbled and overwhelmed and so grateful that this is the publisher. I mean, I didn't know how they worked when I even signed with them,
Mhm.
and it is just such a perfect fit and so completely orchestrated by him every step of the way. So it's just a really, really neat, just a neat experience to be there and to see what they do, and so inspiring.
That's so cool. As you were talking, I thought about the fact that you've already written the book means that there's less time that's going to be involved from their side of like they can turn around and it's already been published. It's already been like kind of fine tuned, you know. We'll see how much they like if they ask you to change anything or anything like that. But I was just thinking from like an editorial standpoint, they're probably not going to have to spend as much time as they would normally. And so that just means that it's less of their overhead that they're putting towards it, which means that it just allows more profit for their side so they can continue doing the ministry that they're doing. So that's really cool too. And that's like, you and I have talked about the wrestle between self publishing and traditional publishing. And, you know, in some cases, it makes sense to go with a traditional publisher. And so I never want to be like traditional publishing is evil and we shouldn't do it. I never want to be like that. I just want people to be aware of, especially in the context of what we're talking about, like creating from rest and Sabbathing and um, having like a dependence on God, but also like stewarding what He's given us well, meaning stewarding our time, stewarding our rest, stewarding our energy levels. Like we have to be really intentional with those things. And so we have to be really wise in the business deals that we make with publishers. And so sometimes those business deals are really not a good stewardship of what God's given us.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they ask us to do things with platform building and stuff that can be draining on your emotional and physical and mental well-being. And so I think it's really important for us as writers to be able to look at it on a holistic thing like you just did with your publisher. And I know you had signed with them before you got to tour their uh, facilities, but how cool is it that in the trusting of God with this, as you have been, because you did this was early, even though you walked away with an agent this time last year
Mhm.
and from a conference, the same conference you actually just attended, right?
Yeah.
So you walked away from that with a an agent. But at the beginning of this year, when you guys started pitching things, it was very much like, okay, well, God's going to have to do this because I'm not writing any proposals this year. I'm not orchestrating anything this year. I'm not going to commit to anything that would require me to write something this year. And you just trusted God with all that. And He brought along a good match
Mm.
for this so that you can continue to intentionally steward your time. You can intentionally lean into allowing Him to be your provider, allowing Him to be your guide in this and your business partner, I guess you could say. And from this side, watching you walk through it and watching others in the industry make deals that from the conversations I have with them and they walk away and they're like, I wish I had never done it. Or,
Yeah.
man, this was not what I thought I was signing up for. Or they walk away from it so burnt out that they're like, I don't know if I could write another book for like another 2 years. Like they're just so burnt out by everything, all the marketing. I think we have to be really intentional in what we're doing. And I love the fact that when you chose to be intentional about resting this year and stepping away from that, God honored it in such a beautiful and wonderful way. And um, I'm curious, is any of this impacting how you think you're going to move forward? Like, have you been able to start fleshing things out for when you do resume activities in January? Have you begun to start to think about what that's gonna look like for you?
I have, because this is, the time of year where I would start to plan things that are coming up. I think more so and more recently, it has affected just me at the conference and meeting with people because I met with several, editors at different publishers and things while I was there. And it didn't feel like my destiny hinged on any of these appointments, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. And so, like you said, a year ago at this same conference is when I walked away with an agent. And it just, when I think about how he has put all of this together, and it, I didn't go into that conference wanting an agent because I was really enjoying self publishing, right? Like, I've
Mhm.
got this, I know what I'm doing, I can handle it, I'm in charge of every step. I don't need to rely on anybody else's input or whatever. And I remember getting this offer from an agent and I'm conflicted, right? Like, do I sign? Do I not sign? I kind of feel like I don't know. I really feel strongly that self publishing is the right path for many books at many times. Not every book at every time, but many books at many times. And I just remember God saying, will you trust me with this book?
Mhm.
And it's hard because even though I was self-publishing, there was this control factor, right? Like, I'm holding on to this thing, I'm protecting it, I'm in charge of it, it is mine, and I don't wanna release that control. And part of it is, the rights to the information or whatever, but part of it is just like, I just want it to be mine. And so when he said, "Can you trust me with it?" I was like, "Oh gosh, what if a publisher does something with it that I don't want them to do? What if they put it out there, it flops, and then they discontinue it and now it's dead, the project is gone. Um, what if, all the things." And I was almost more scared of someone wanting it than someone not wanting it, if that makes any sense at all. It was like, "Okay, I'll sign with an agent, but only because I don't think anybody's gonna pick this book up. Okay, we'll pitch the proposal, but only because I'm sure they're gonna look at my numbers and be like, 'What is she thinking?' No, absolutely not. Okay, well, I'll only entertain this publisher because, and God is like slowly peeling one finger at a time off of this project, saying, will you trust me with it?" And how often do we think we know better than God what to do with our words, whether it's a publisher or not a publisher? I was being just as prideful in self publishing as others are about traditional publishing. And so it really isn't the path as much as it is our heart. And we have to check and see, like, how am I really uh, demonstrating my faith or lack of faith in this decision? Um, and we had already talked about this months ago that I had gotten an offer from another publisher that would have required a rewrite. And so I said no because of just the way that this year is. And I never would have accepted Our Daily Bread if I had accepted that one. And God knew all along this was the right fit for me and my personality. And I'm so glad I trusted him with it. And
And
he's
what you're
going to
called to
do
do,
things, yes,
right?
that I never would have been able to do on my own. He's like, well, good job, Erin, for all your hard work and all your amazing marketing skills. You reached X number of people, which was like a drop in the bucket of what I'm going to do with this book now that you have given it to me so I can do what I wanted to do with it. So I think it's just a lesson in release. And as I have these other projects that I'm thinking of and not sure how to move forward with, it's like, okay, you know what? I don't have to worry about that because you have a plan and I'll move forward in in faith that you're going to direct me and you're going to direct this project. And I don't have to try to control it because you're in
Right.
control. It just shifts everything.
Mm, so good. Something that came to my mind when you were talking about God saying, "Look what you did. Now I'm going to do something incredible." You're talking about not feeling like your whole entire career hinged on those people in that room, right?
Mhm.
I think in the industry, in this writing space that we're in, so often authors think that a publisher is the answer to everything. And they're looking to make a connection with a publisher because they think, oh, I can hand the project off to them and they're going to make it happen and they're going to be the answer. And in that moment, when you released control to God, God connected you with not an end all be all answer. He connected you with a partner, with somebody who together you guys could create something really great and awesome and amazing. Like together, your book is now going to minister to people in a way that is in alignment with what he's called you to do and in alignment with what they're called to do. And I wonder if more of us had that heart posture of, Lord, you have entrusted this to me. Bring me to the right partners who together we can create something that can be in alignment with what I'm called to do and in alignment with what they're called to do. I think if we approached it with that mindset, man, God could do a lot with that, a lot with the projects that we make. And I'm not just talking like with traditional publishers, I'm just talking in general because even if you're self published, God can connect you with people who can get you in front of other people. I was talking to somebody the other day about, and I said to her, I said, start looking for there's this concept of hubs and spokes, right? Like the person that can introduce you to like the hub of the wheel that can introduce you to the spokes of that wheel, meaning like the point person in a community. And I'm like, start looking for the hubs that can introduce your book to their spokes, right? To their community. And she's like, that's a really great idea. I hadn't thought about that. And we don't think about that. We think like it's all up to us to market
Yeah.
our books. It's all up to us to get the word out there. And honestly, it's kind of what the writing industry is telling us right now. Like, you got to build your platform because it's on you to market your book once it's out there, even if you are traditionally published. And the reality is, none of us can do any of this on our own, like
Yeah.
ever. If there's a business with just one person, that business can only do so much. My dad owns his own business. There's only so many things he can do. He only so many clients he can have before he has to start hiring, right? And the same is true for us as an author. Like there's only so much we can do. We have to partner with other people if our books are going to go beyond our 200, 300 people, 400 people that we can reach. And no matter how much we build our platforms or anything like that. I really think it's really cool that you have been trusting God with this, and He has been just blowing your mind with how He is showing you, just trust me. Like, I have a community of people that is going to come around and support the mission I've called you to if you would
Yeah.
just follow me with it. So,
Yeah.
is there any other ways that you're starting to, like, we were starting to ask that question about how are you going to approach the new year? Is there anything that you're doing now to prepare yourself for that?
I've got half a year to go, and I'm getting to the point where I'm starting to know things are on the calendar. Um, and how much do I do to prepare for those things now? How much do I wait? So I'm kind of getting into, once again, a little bit of murky water where it's like, okay, God, what is work? What is not work? How do I prepare for
Mhm.
these things? But mostly what has been happening is I'm like, I had planned to do this in February. I'm not going to do that next year. Or I had planned to do this before that, but now I'm going to do it way after. I'm not going to put those two right next to each other. So
Cool that
right
you're
now
starting to get
there's only one for sure thing on the calendar, and that is in March.
Are you gonna
But
talk about that now?
do you want me to? I feel like we're
Yes.
taking so much time today.
I
So
love it.
excited because we can finally share about it. So this is definitely a project that is born out of the Sabbath year. Um, in January, another conference that I was not going to go to because Sabbath year, a friend of mine was invited to speak at the conference and she gets a free plus one. So she asked me to be her plus one. This is the same friend that we go to all the conferences together. So I was like, okay, I'm going as her plus one. I'm going to work her book table. I'm going to pass out the sheets at her breakout session. I'm going as a support person. So this totally falls under Sabbath year. This is not for me. And so there were 7 of us that had an Airbnb while we were there, and we were all staying together, friends from, just different writing places. We couldn't wait at the end of each day of this conference for us to be able to go back to this Airbnb because there was a hot tub. And we would get in the hot tub, and every night we'd be like, "Oh, we've got to be at the conference early. We're not going to stay long in the hot tub." And then hours and hours in the hot tub because we were talking about what God was doing in our lives and how he was teaching us and growing us and what he was calling us to do in the next season. And all around the circle, we all kind of felt this same burnout, right? This was, I'm like 2 weeks into my Sabbath year at this point, and I'm still really burnt out. And we were just talking about all of the demands of the business side of writing and all of these pressures that we feel to do, and create, and just how exhausting that is. And man, around that hot tub, there was such a spiritual renewal in just sharing with others, focusing on what Christ was calling us to do instead of what publishers wanted us to do. And, it just, there was something about it. And I don't know how to explain it, but it's like, I know something special is happening here. And I don't know what it's going to be, but it felt like one of those life change pivotal moments. There was one person who wasn't supposed to be there, but someone had to drop out and she took their place at the last minute and she was like just a perfect fit. Another person needed a place to crash for 2 nights, so she was on our couch, another perfect fit. And God formed this leadership team of 8 people that I never would have formed on my own. If you had said form a leadership team of 8, I would have agonized over that decision for months. But he was like, here's your people. These are the people I want you to do this thing with. And we didn't know what the thing was. We just knew, okay, something. In the weeks following, I don't know who said it first, but someone said the word retreat. And we all kind of were like, yes, 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 yes. We were all thinking it, but no one was saying it because it sounded big and scary. Um, and so we were kind of like, okay, what does that even look like? I don't know. We'll just sit on it. It'll just let that simmer. So I take a trip, a family vacation to Colorado Springs, and we visit Glen Erie, which is the headquarters of the Navigators. And it borders the Garden of the Gods, if you've ever been to that national park. So it's gorgeous, and it's got a giant castle on the property. I mean, it is like, it's beautiful, but once again, there's something when you walk onto that property where the Holy Spirit is here and he's doing things. And I immediately knew, like, this is where we're having our retreat. Whatever retreat it is, this is where it's going to be. God's like, here's the spot. So I text the group from there, don't look for a place. I've got the place for whatever the thing is. It's going to be here. So then we continue meeting. We plan, get a vision for what we want it to be. We come up with a name, Daughters First. And that is because before we are speakers, podcasters, writers, all the things, we're daughters of the King. And if we aren't investing in that relationship, then, I mean, we're not going to be able to pour out into others. We're not going to have authentic content that points them to him if we aren't intimately connected with him. And I feel a lot of times, like as writers, we read our Bibles, we spend a lot of time with him, but the whole time we're taking notes on the side of like, oh, this would be a good illustration. Oh, that's a great connection. I need to share this in my stories, all the things. And God's like, hello, no, this is just for you. Would you back up for a second and listen to what I'm telling you? So what we wanna do is create a retreat where we can do that. We're gonna leave business cards at the door. If we find them, we're burning them. Name tags are gonna be first name only. We don't care, like, leave your Erin Grunow author at home. You're just Erin here. No pitching, no proposals, no nothing. It is just for you to connect with God with other people who understand exactly what you're going through. Um, so yeah, God has just put all of this together. One of the things we did not want to do was make a business, right? But if you're going to have a retreat, you have to have a business. So we were like, oh, we got to start an LLC. We have to get insurance. We have to charge people money, but then we have a bank account and then we have this extra money. What do we do with this extra money? And then we're like, we've got a brand and we're building a business. All the things we want to stay away from at this retreat, right? We're just want to retreat. So we proposed our event to the programs department at Glen Erie, and it is a very vigorous process to get accepted under their program. And we were accepted, which means we don't touch a penny of money. They do all the registration, they do all of the administration as far as like putting people in the rooms. We pay nothing up front for any of the facilities. They cover all the facilities. They cater all the meals. I mean, it's like when I was talking to friends about this at a conference, because 'cause they're all like, "Oh, yeah, we're planning a retreat. So many headaches." And I'm like, "It's done. There is no headache. Like, we get to come and we get to do the content, and we don't have to do anything else." And it's such a God thing that he lined all of that up. And the speaker is gonna be Jennifer Dukes Lee, and that was a God thing of how he put all that together because we could not afford her. Anyway, it just he's been so good, and every step of the way, he has provided, and it's like we keep coming up against a barrier, and we're like, "Oh, well, I guess that won't work that way," and then he's like, "Red Sea parted, you just walk on through, the doors are wide open," and over again. Other people in the group keep going, "Oh, I know you've put so much work into this." I'm like, "No, I haven't. I haven't at all. It's been all him." So we're really excited that hopefully the wait list will be open soon. Probably by the time this goes up, the wait list will be open, and then they wanna open registration September 1st if everything goes according to plans.
I'm so
Anyway,
excited.
so exciting.
Okay, so what's the date?
March 10th through the 12th. We have
Just a minute.
120 spots.
Do you have price point yet figured out?
So
Or
we have approximate at this point. They should get the final stuff to us very soon. But if you're sharing a room and the rooms have double queen beds, I think it's going to be around 350 to 400 per person. That's conference fees and all meals and your lodging. That's
wow,
yes, that is
that's
all the
huge.
things.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah.
If you're sharing a room, if
It's
you
a
do
little
a
bit
single.
more if you're doing a single room, and then they have, like, some fancy rooms if you wanna stay in the castle and a king bed and all of that stuff, you can do that. I don't know how much that costs, but we will be in those rooms.
That's so funny. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. That is so cool. I
Yeah.
am so excited that you guys are doing this. I just am in awe of how God has brought it together. I'm looking forward to, like getting to participate in it. The community is one of the
Mhm.
best parts of a writing conference. If you know
Yeah.
people, it really can be so wonderful. It's hard when you don't know people. I think most conferences try to be intentional about giving you opportunities to meet people. Like I went to a conference back in April. It wasn't a writing conference, but um, I didn't know anybody and I was so nervous. But so many people in the creative space, I think because the work we do is it's so isolated, we're
Mhm.
doing it often in our homes, like, we're doing this weird, like, internet thing.
Yeah.
You have the social media presence, content creation, all of those things, and, it can feel really like nobody else in the world gets it because the majority of people in our, like, physical communities, like our church communities, even our spouses, they don't really quite understand what's happening on the computer for us. And so to be in the room with others who get it, but who also don't want to be striving and they don't want it to be their identity, I think it's gonna be a great thing to have that community where with other people who understand what we're going through, but we're not trying to wade around um, experts telling us what we have to do in order to be successful and vendors trying to pitch us their products. That'd
Yeah.
be nice. Or going to a conference and honestly feeling like you have to be on the entire time because you're feeling like any second could be your break, right? Any second you're going to break through and you're going to be find the publisher or the agent that's going to pick you up. And so you feel like you have to be on the entire time. So grateful that you guys are trying to strip that away. So it really is about developing you as a person with the Lord so that you can then go and do the thing he's called you to do. I love that so much. Um, yeah, so I'm just excited. I'm just excited for you guys.
And I think so often God is calling us to do an unconventional thing or take it a way that is just different. But we have so many professionals now who are telling us, here's the way you have to do it. Here's the way if you want to succeed. Here's the way to beat the algorithm. And
Yeah.
God, he's a little bit over the algorithm and the course and the systems and all the things. And I think we forget to give him credit so that when he tells us to do something that's maybe a little different, maybe outside the box, maybe
Yeah.
goes against the grain of what's working for everybody else, and maybe it's not going to be successful in the world's eyes, but it's what he's telling us to do. And we
Right.
can't hear him over all the noise unless we give him the stage. And so I think, at least my hope for the weekend is that we'll be able to give him the stage and
Mm,
hear what are you calling me to do? What is your plan here? Not how can you bless what I'm doing, but how can I be a part of what you're doing?
mhm.
Because he is doing stuff and he wants
Right.
us to do it with him. Um,
And I think too, asking the Lord, like, there's all these things that I could do, but which ones do you want me to invest my energy into? Like,
yeah.
there's nothing wrong with what the experts are telling us to do, right? There's a lot of wisdom in what they're putting out. Like, there are some tried and true marketing techniques. There's some tried and true branding guides. They're experts in their crafts, right? But at the end of the day, are those the tools that God wants us to use in the mission he's called us to? Whatever it is that he's asking us to do. Are we approaching it with that idea of these are just tools in our toolbox? They are not our lifesaver and they are just things to be utilized. They're resources and they're just different aspects or avenues to accomplish the goal. But God wants us to use certain ones more than others. And are we listening to that? Are we being sensitive to it? So
Yeah.
I'm excited. So we'll
Okay.
definitely put all those details in the show notes. You will go and be refreshed and renewed and just feel a sense of rest and peace so that they can then create from rest, right?
Yeah.
When they leave from
Yeah.
the retreat.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Tell me about your month. What's been going on? Give me all the
ooh.
updates.
Well, I love that when you said touring around the publishing
Yeah.
company's
The
headquarters,
headquarters.
it humbled you and
Yeah.
overwhelmed you. And I was like, I kind of chuckled because I'm like, that's what I said for a different reason. I'm like, I feel like this is my month of humbling.
Mm.
And so I kind of chuckled a little bit. I'm like, her humbling sounded a lot more fun, Lord.
That's I had some not fun humbling at the beginning of this year, but, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe the fun humbling is coming.
I hope so. I hope so. No, I just keep being reminded over and over. And I don't remember how much I shared last month because I just feel like I was at the beginning of it.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm still kind of in the middle of it. But I was talking to my daughter the other day and we were talking about an issue, a little bit of a pride issue. Apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. Um, and a little bit of just not having enough compassion for her siblings. And we're talking through these issues that she was wrestling with. And she's like, well, I just feel like I pray and then God doesn't change my heart. And all of a sudden, the imagery from, did you ever read Voyage of the Dawn Treader by C.S. Lewis?
Yeah.
I believe it's in that book. I might be wrong. I'm pretty sure it's that book where Eustace is kind of like the main character and he's like a very self-centered, very like just not a good kid, like just somebody you really don't want to be around, right? Very
Mhm.
self-serving, spoiled, a little prideful.
Mm.
And he um finds the dragon treasure and he hoards it and he like wants it and he becomes this dragon, right? Like his selfishness kind of turns him into a dragon. But I was telling my daughter, I'm like, there is a scene where Aslan, who is supposed to be symbolically God for those who haven't read the book, um, Aslan finds Eustace, and Eustace is just full of shame and um, he regrets his behavior and he's like in a state of repentance, but he's filled with shame and doesn't know what to do. And Aslan begins to peel off each of the scales, and it's painful to
Mhm.
Eustace. But as Aslan pulls off all the scales, Eustace becomes like a new creation, right?
Yeah.
And God removes the shame and he pulls back the layers of all of the selfishness and greediness and whatnot. And so I was sharing this with my daughter, and I was like reminded of how I need so many of the scales pulled off of me. And I have to be honest, it's been a really long time that I have been aware of, and this sounds so horrible, but aware of my sin in such a humbling way. For me, growing up in the church, it has been um, so easy to be like, well, I've been saved. I haven't done anything horrible. I've been a pretty good person my whole life, even though I know like none of my salvation or sanctification comes from the works that I do. I kind of am just like, well, I'm a pretty decent person. Like, I don't really know that I have anything to work on. Like, obviously, there's some things that I need to work on, but I don't know. It's just from a very like a place of j- not allowing your sin to wreck you. Just, I don't know how to explain it. And so, like, for some reason in recent years, now, let me just clarify. I think there is a fine line between like just allowing our shame of what our sin is to just like overwhelm us to the point where we don't know what to do with ourselves. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about like a healthy fear of the fact that God is on the throne. I am not. And the way to live in his kingdom is so contrary to our world. And there are so many things that I am not getting right. And I have defined successful living or defined doing well wrongly because I started looking at it through the world's eyes. And there is a layer of where my perfectionism and pride has almost justified some of my behaviors that haven't been the most honoring to God. And it's
Mm.
not anything that anybody would be like, they'd be like, Rachel, you are being way too hard on yourself. And I have had people say that to me. And I'm like, no, maybe, but maybe not hard enough. Because honestly, if the Lord was standing in front of me, I think I would probably be a little bit more harder on myself than I have been because if I have to give an account to him for how I steward this gift of having a new life in him and being a part of his kingdom work, and the fact that I'm a daughter of the king, like you said earlier, like the position I hold in this world and this position and this privilege I have of co creating with him and co stewarding this upside down kingdom of God, I have not been stewarding that very well. And I have not been living up to what it means to be a daughter of the king. And I mean it in very small ways because I don't think anybody would look at me and be like, oh, you are a selfish person. Most people would say I'm a good person. I just know that I am not always keeping the right priorities in mind, and I'm not always keeping relationships at the center of things, and I'm not always seeking him. And I sometimes am trying to strive my way into it, not for his approval or anybody else's approval, but just trying to force things or trying to do things on my own and not trusting him. And I think that is hard for people like you and I who are very high achieving, hardworking, who have a layer of perfectionism that we're fighting against constantly, to realize that God doesn't want us to do it all on our own, that He wants us to do it within relationships. He wants us to do it within community, and He wants us to do it with Him, right? I've been reading some of the places in scripture where it talks about the Sabbath. And I'm just reminded again and again, like the Lord harped on Sabbath. Like Jeremiah literally says to them, like, if you don't just stop and observe the Sabbath, like the Lord is going to deliver you over to other nations. Like there's literally a section in Jeremiah that says that. And I think it's because it's about the heart. It's about the heart posture, right? And earlier in that same chapter, like right before he goes into the Sabbath thing, that verse about the heart is desperately wicked. And then it talks about that the Lord searches the heart, right? And then in our modern translations, it always says in the mind. But my Bible had a footnote and it actually said um, that in Hebrew it's the kidneys. And so I'm like, What do kidneys have to do with anything?" And so I like looked into it. In ancient Israel, the kidneys were um, not just about decision making, but it was like the intention behind the decision. So earlier you're talking about like, why am I even doing the things I'm doing? Right. Like, have we asked ourselves that? Like, why am I on social media? Why am I writing this book? Why am I trying to sell these things to these people? Like, what is my why behind it? And I'm not saying that why is like your why could be, I need to support my family because that's how God has given me a gift to support my family, right? Right now, God is asking me to write a book because He's given me a message that I believe needs to get out there. And even if like, maybe your why is because you as a person need to be creating because that's how God's created you is to be creative, right? So, like, there's many different whys, but sometimes I get very confused in my why. And sometimes I start to create a why that God never gave me to begin with in the first place. And so part of my humbling has been this recognition that when God gave me the go ahead to write my novels, I totally went this other route of doing coaching because it was easier to market and it could make me money faster. And I had a why of, oh, well, I want to support my family. I want to help contribute to my family. Which, first of all, I just want everybody to hear there's nothing wrong with that why at all. But that's not why God asked me to write novels. Because if I'm being honest, my husband has a very lucrative job. We financially have struggled in the past, but that is not our current season. So here's the thing God has asked us to build a family business. I turned what God asked us to do to build for our family, I turned that into here's how I can contribute to the family. And I don't know where I got that from. Somewhere along the way, I went, here's the thing I can do, and I can do it on my own and I can make it happen. I'm realizing that I took what God meant for me to do alongside with my family, and I made it a very individual thing that I could accomplish and achieve on my own. And a year ago, I just realized this morning before I got on this call, I just think God's timing is funny. A year ago, I actually wrote down in my prayer journal, I'm like, Lord, please heal me on one page. And then on the next page, I wrote down, how can I integrate my family better with my work? And then on the next page, I had asked, help me not forget that I have a family team. And I read that this morning and I went, oh my gosh, you answered these things. You answered these prayers that I prayed a year ago. And here I'm thinking they're going to show up in one way, and you have answered them by peeling away the scales. And it hurts because I have had to apologize to my family and say, and I've had to apologize to my husband, and we've had to have some really hard conversations. And so this last month looked a lot like reprioritizing. It's looked a lot like what is our family mission? What has God asked us to do as a family? Instead of approaching it versus like, what's my calling? The first thing we're asking is, what is our family's calling? And then what are the assignments we each have as an individual to further that mission? And there's a really great book that has helped us frame that we've read a long time ago and we're revisiting it now. It's Take Back Your Family by Jefferson Bethke. I always recommend this book to people because he has a part in his book where he talks about we get caught up in family and ministry, which is what you hear a lot of people talk about. Oh, my parents sacrificed us as, family in order to ministry. So you can make that mistake, right? Or you can make the mistake that family is ministry, which in my circles of being a homeschooler is I saw a lot where women treated their families as if that was their only ministry. sacrificing themselves, like, they kinda got absorbed into this, and then they got burnt out by it because that's not what God asked us to do either, right? And so everything was on them. Everything became about them raising their children perfectly so their kids didn't walk away from the faith. And God never asked us to do that either, right? He doesn't ask us to save our kids. He asks us to disciple them. And so our kids are not our ministry necessarily. They're our disciples. They're the ones that we lead by example and we train them in the way of the Lord, but ultimately God has to reach them, right? They have to make that decision. It is not on our shoulders to save them. And so I think we can kind of put ourselves in the wrong place. And then he talks about family on mission, that your family is together, working towards a goal, and you each have individual assignments within that space. Um, and so that is the mindset I am trying to shift to and asking the Lord prayerfully, what does that mean? And so um, right now, it looks like I'm continuing to build this business with my mom for Homeschool Directive. And the Lord has just blessed us. We had like 85% retention rate this last launch. So the clients that were with us last year, it's a year-long program. Um, they 85, 86% of them re-enrolled with us for the next year, which is mind-blowing to think about. And I just am so grateful and so appreciative. And it's also really weird to begin to make money. It was the first time I was able to actually take like an owner draw from the um from the money that we made. And that money, that little tiny bit of money, it was not a lot, but it was a little bit. And it was finally like, yeah, we've made enough money. I can take this owner draw. I found out in the same week that my bookkeeper was like, "Rachel, you have to take a draw." And I'm like, "Okay, fine." "How much?" And she's like, "This much." I'm like, "Okay." Um, and the reason she was forcing me is because it's a partnership, we have to have so much equal equity in the company and things like that. So she, she was like, "You guys have to be equal." I'm like, "Okay, okay, sorry." She's like, "You have to take this owner draw." She's like, "You can comfortably do this number and it'll be okay." I'm like, "Okay." And I'm cool with that. And that same week, God brought to my attention this co-op, this homeschool co-op. I've been trying to find one in this area, and none of them have had the same philosophy. None of them have had kind of the same um like, what the demand on my schedule would be. It's really hard as a working homeschool mom to navigate. Sometimes it just doesn't work out, and I hadn't been able to find something, and God, this very same week, brought along something that is going to be such an amazing fit for our family this fall, and it's just so happened that the amount of money I needed for that co-op was the amount of money that came from this owner draw. Like this week, a bunch of expenses for homeschooling and for my family came up, and this business actually did contribute to my family. I'm sorry, I'm just like overwhelmed and humbled by it all because it's like the Lord is just reminding me that He is in the details and the things that He's asked me to do. Sometimes I go kicking and screaming against them because I don't want to do them because they're not fun. And while I love what we're doing at Homeschool Directive, sometimes it's not as fun as writing a novel, right?
Yeah.
Especially at like my writer heart, right? I'm like, I just want to write books. Oh, and God's like, that's not exactly where I've just called you to be. So, all that to say, I have been evaluating too, like, what are you asking me to do as far as this author brand? And what are we trying to build long term with this author brand as a family? Like, how is this author brand, this little side hustle author brand, how is that meeting our overall family's mission? Is my participation in this bringing us closer to that mission or taking me away from it? Because at the end of the day, I don't want to take away from my family. And I don't want to ever sacrifice what we've been called to do as a family on the altar of Rachel's achievements.
Mm.
So that looks a lot like just sitting with a journal or like a notebook and just writing down ideas. It's a lot of brainstorming right now. Like Obviously, the first place it's going to show up is my social media. And I made some adjustments, some bio adjustments, some website adjustments. So I have been doing some work to move my author brand away from that coaching to um, being an author. And I've made some changes with the podcast, going down to just 2 episodes a month, one from an expert that I interview, and then one for our conversations here, creating from rest. I've just committed to that for the next 6 months. Who knows what's going to happen in January? For social media, still praying through that, still notebooking it out, and then making sure to still be writing, because what I can do sometimes is when things aren't perfectly making sense to me, I just kinda can shut down and be like, "Well, I don't have it all figured out, so I'm not gonna try to create in the middle of that until I have it all perfectly figured out." And so I don't like to do things in the messy middle, but God's like, "No, I still am asking you to write." So, so I did that and I stepped out in faith and was like, "Okay, Lord, I know I'm gonna need a cover for this novel." I think I mentioned in the last episode, I've moved my publication date to May of next year. And, I reached out to a designer who I think she does an amazing job with book covers, and I've actually have interviewed her for this podcast a couple times. But I reached out to her, I'm like, "Hey, do you have any room next year?" And she's like, "I do." And the time frame that she had available was perfect with what my whole schedule is. Um, so that was kinda exciting. So that's on the docket. Um, I reached out to my editor and I was like, now my editor and I had a bartering arrangement, so I was feeling, like, really bad that I had done my side of the barter, but she's been waiting for me, and I was like, I didn't know if it was gonna be like, "Okay, now this is just gonna fizzle or not." And she was so kind and understanding, and she's like, "Whenever it is ready, whenever God has it for you to be ready, then we'll just go from there." And I was like, "Well, Lord, you know exactly who's supposed to be the editor on this, because if she's available, she'll be available. If not, you'll have somebody. Um, and if I have to pay somebody else, then you'll provide the money for it." Like, it's just gonna be, like, how it is. Um, and then I'm trying to think of what else I've done just to be trying to be purposeful about that. Oh, um, in December, or, like, before December, I'm going to re-promote my Advent journal, and my family, we wanna make these boxes, like candles and, like, a kit that you could purchase to go along with the book, and involve my whole family in that, and so we're starting to think through what do we need to do to prepare for that. And my daughter was so cute because she heard about a business fair, like a kids business fair that's coming up in November. She's like, "That'll be perfect timing. We can have our boxes there." And it just like made my heart so happy that this book that I wrote, you crying. This book that I wrote, my kids can see how they can be a part of it. And that on this table of things that she wants to sell, she wants to include our kit that we're gonna make together. And I just like, this is what I want. I want it to be never where it feels like mom's off doing her own thing, making big waves and big splashes, and it feels so disjointed from the rest of the family. I've seen some people do it really well, and I've seen some people not do it so right. And I'm trying to make sure that I am following the ones who are doing it well, but also recognizing that those people who are doing it well, recognizing that they have a team around them. And so that's the other thing I'm praying through is like, what can I delegate more of? And I actually talked to um, my mom about that this morning. I'm like, that's something I want to do even in homeschool directive. I want to see, where can I delegate better? What are things that I could give to somebody as a project? Homeschooling is something that we plan to do unless God drastically changes that. I don't foresee that changing in the future. And so I want to make sure that I am available to do that. And that's like a full-time job in and of itself. And so I'm like, I need to be much more strategic about what I can hire others to do and delegate out to them. So I'm not spending hours designing a website page when somebody else could easily do that for $100, you know?
Mm.
So I just need to start thinking like that, thinking about how can I create within the context of community, creating doesn't always mean me doing it. So trying to think through some of that.
Thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing all of that, because I know what you described at the beginning was my February and March, and it is not a fun place to be. Not at all. But like you said with the story with Eustace being a dragon, at a certain point you realize I can't move forward as a dragon. Something has to change, and only God can do it. And he has to peel this away, or I'm not going to be able to move forward and do what he has called me to do.
Yeah.
And I think, I hope, I wish more people, Christians who were raised in the church like you and I, would hit that wall so that they could move forward. Because you had said allowing your sin to wreck you. I love that phrase. I think old school church, it was all fire and brimstone, we swung too far this way, and now it's all grace and, God loves you. And that is good. These are both true. There is justice and mercy together. But we need to walk this middle road where we allow our sin to wreck us, where we look at it and we don't excuse it and we don't justify it and we don't say it's okay because I was forgiven before I did this, or, oh, sin is sin, like whatever, pride, but we're all prideful, right? So it's fine.
But it's not as bad as like murder.
Exactly. It's not
You know?
murder. I'm fine. I'm a good person and all of these
Right.
things. And honestly, the more God allowed my pride to wreck me, the more I realized this sin is the most dangerous. Because we actually think, we won't say this in our out loud voice because when we do, we're like, oh no, that's ridiculous. But somewhere in our mind and in our heart, we think we can do it without him,
Mhm.
that we can earn salvation, that we can perform. And the closer we are to perfection without him, the further we are from where we need to be with him.
Yeah.
And that is a scary place to be, because suddenly we're turning into the camel that can't fit through the eye of the needle, right? And and yeah, it's this weird backwards thing where it's like, okay, the more viable I think my efforts are, the worse off I am. I mean, this is the worst sin, because I don't think there's many people, maybe there are, out there who kill people and then go, oh, it wasn't that bad. But they know they need Christ, and the less we know we need Christ, the more we need him. We are really, I mean, flying too close to the sun at that point.
Yeah.
Um, and
It's
just
kind
the
of like it.
justification that we
Yeah.
can do. We're so good at it. We're so good at deceiving ourselves. We don't have to deceive anyone else because no one else sees our heart. It doesn't really change anything on the outside. We look the same no matter what on the outside, and that is another part that makes it so dangerous, is that we just justify the inside, the part that we know about, and then we keep moving forward. And yeah, it's not good.
Yeah. And I think about it this way. I live in the kingdom of God, right? The kingdom of God is at hand, and I am part of that. And I have given a place of representative or ambassador, right? We all have that authority to go out in Jesus' name and to bear witness to what he's done and to share the gospel, to minister in his name. We've all been given that authority to be his ambassadors. And I think pride is the ambassador getting too big for his britches and thinking he can make decisions as if he was king,
Mm.
and not recognizing that everything he does is not done in his name, it's done in the king's name. And everything that he does has to be run through the lens of the king. And if you start to make side deals, and if you start making these little like decisions without the king's input, then you are committing treason.
Mm.
We should be scared that we are making decisions out of pride for our lives and trying to have a version of success in our minds for our lives that are not first run by the king, being that we are his representatives and everything that we do is done in his name.
Yeah.
And that's the place I'm at right now. I am like, please, Lord, please humble me because I do not want to make another step without knowing what it is that you want me to do. And I don't want to get stuck there either.
Right.
So give me the courage that once I know what you want me to do, that I actually do it because there's a little bit of that happens too, for me at least. Like, okay, this is what you want me to do, but I don't know that I want to do it that way. Like you said, like when God asks you to do stuff that's a little bit outside the box or a little bit weird, you're like, really? And I think back to all the people, Noah with an ark, Woo! Abraham taking his son up on a mountain. The disciples probably looking at him like he's crazy when the kid is giving them a little tiny bit of food and he's like, okay, take the baskets and distribute it. But that's the truth of the matter is like we live in the upside down kingdom of Jesus. It does not make sense with our little tiny brains. And the fact of the matter is the Lord searches the heart and kidneys and he knows our intentions. He knows our desires and he knows when we're not in alignment with his desire and he knows when our intention is coming from a place of pride or selfishness or whatever and not from a place of full reliance on him when we are trusting our own ability and not the Father. And so I actually wrote in my um prayer journal this morning that normally I deal with two things. Perfectionism for me shows up in two ways. It's either laziness, like, I just don't wanna do it because it either doesn't sound fun or it will be an inconvenience. So it's laziness, or it will look like fear. Like, I don't wanna do it because either I won't be perfect at it, or I don't wanna do this because I might look a certain way in people's eyes, and so it shows up in fear, and so I ask myself, like, "Okay, what are the 2 things that will combat these 2 ways in which perfectionism shows up in my life, or pride shows up in my life, or whatever?" Um, and the 2 things that I realized is that to combat laziness, I need to have discipline, right? But to combat fear is not to have courage, it's to have trust in the Lord,
Mhm.
because that's where your confidence comes from. And when you have trust in the Lord, then you can go out in the battle and fight alongside of him. And you can go out as his representative and you can go out and do the things that he's told you to do because you know it doesn't depend on you. It depends on the Lord. And I think that's what Sabbath weekly teaches us. I think that's what a Sabbath year teaches us. And I hope I do not forget that in a month.
Mm.
I hope I don't leave this month and go right back into my habits of trying to do things on my own and in
Yeah.
like forcing things into being.
Mm. Thank you so much for all that you've shared. That's and I love that story about your finances too, about how that draw from one company is building back into your family, especially as you are stepping into what does it look like to be a ministry as a family and not just an individual. I love that picture. And I think it's very counterintuitive to what we're seeing today. And I just want to encourage you, I don't think you're gonna get stuck here because
Yeah.
I know your heart, and I see some things that nobody else gets to see, and that's a privilege for me, and not only is God blessing you through these unexpected, like the same amount of money that you needed, but you're blessing others in that same kind of way, and so just know that you are being a good ambassador in doing things on his behalf that are needed and appreciated and recognized as coming from God. And so I have no doubt that you will not get stuck there. It might be miserable for a little while, but only because he wants to take you to a new place and he can't take you while you're a dragon. And so I'm excited only because I've seen what he's done in me since March and February that were so yucky. No, you don't wanna go back there. But I know what he's done since then, and I can't wait to see what he has next for you.
Yeah, me too. And I'm glad I have friends like you to hold me accountable. I am thankful for you, Erin. Thank you. And thank you that you have this conversation with me each month because I wonder if we didn't start doing these conversations, I'm sure God would have gotten to me some way. But when I was thinking about like, oh, I think there should be a part in my podcast about creating from rest because I think that's important. And God's like, you're going to have these conversations with Erin. I'm like, oh, okay. And then I reached out to you and you're like, this sounds great. And I didn't realize how deeply this monthly conversation was going to affect me. So I'm grateful for you. And it's only been half a year.
Yeah. Same for me. I as I started the Sabbath year thing, I was like, I'm processing a lot. I feel like I need to like have a outlet to process,
Yeah.
with a person, maybe externally. And I was thinking, well, it can't be like a blog series because that's a thing. And it can't be like a podcast because that's a thing. And it can't.
Yeah.
And then you said, I think you called me and you were like, I want to do like a monthly podcast. Would you just talk with me? And like, I'll do all the stuff. Perfect. All I have to do is show up and talk to you. That's exactly what I want to do. And then every month I'm like, you don't have to publish this if you don't want to. This
I do like just processing this, but like you said, like God wants to take me somewhere new and he can't take me there as a dragon. And I think I needed to be brought to that place. And now that he has, I feel a sense of it's time to release these episodes that they have been just for me and you up until now. And even though we recorded them with the idea that we could share them, I think God has been like, it's not time to share them fully yet. But I think in a way, like I needed them not to go out yet because there was things that I needed to do. And so now that I've kind of learned some of that, I think releasing them now, I will be releasing them in a much better place than I was trying to fit them into a certain mold to achieve a certain thing. And in the last couple of weeks, God's like, release it to me. Take your hand off of needing this to be something and just let them be what they are and let them be what I want them to be. Anyway, all that to say, I am thankful for you. I'm glad the other episodes will be dropping. So by the time you guys listen to this one, the other ones will have dropped, but then you can kind of hear a little bit behind the scenes, real time of what was happening. But yeah, these will be what they are, and God's going to use them however He wants. And we have no idea, and that's okay.
exactly. We're just being obedient and faithful and a little real.
Right? I love it. All right. Well, I will see you next month. And if you're watching on YouTube, drop a comment and let us know if anything resonated with you from this conversation. Or if you ever want to send either one of us a DM, feel free. Just know we care about you guys. And we are praying for you in a sense of where we care and pray for our entire community, that God moves in us and doesn't let us all stay dragons, that he moves us to a place where we are new creation, bearing his name and bearing witness to what he's doing in our lives. So, and on that note, thank you guys for listening, and we'll talk to you next month.